Hello, this is Paul Gibbs here, giving you my reflections on the academic press for last week. For this discussion, I'm going to mainly concentrate on three themes. The first of those themes are academic freedom. We have seen reported both in the national news and in the trade press the cases of Davy Miller and Catherine Stock. Both of those individuals have been either sanctioned by their institution for their own free speech. I'm not intending to discuss in any detail what these two academics had to say, but it brings to attention the real problems that we have with understanding and enacting free academic speech. It's interesting also that another academic at Cambridge University has criticised the Home Office itself for rejecting a presentation that Professor Gobel was going to make on Black Lives Matter, on the fact that they found that his approach was too ideologically different from the government's. Another distressing piece of evidence is that the journal Nature conducted a survey of 300 plus academics who had made contributions on the pandemic and found that 40% of those had actually suffered abuse subsequent to being engaged in promoting to the general public the results of their research. It seems perhaps that being an academic is a very dangerous environment to be in, especially if you take seriously your right to speak out on issues that should inform public debate. The second theme that I'd like to talk about is teachers' education, which is quite obviously clear to us. The government has made more money available for those high priority subjects. I'm not quite sure why any subject that's taught in school isn't high priority. And on the basis that the engagement with teachers is the primary function of ensuring a good education. Now, I have no reason to doubt that. However, the government feel it's necessary to justify that statement through academic evidence. Jolly good. However, the evidence they choose to use is a study conducted by John Hollis, which was published in 2009, which means that the data it was used is probably no later than 2007. Now, that does seem a little strange, for is the government saying there has been nothing of significance in terms of research on how important teaching is for the last 20 odd years? It seems to me to be another example, really, of the education department not really understanding or being in touch with the subject for which it has care. The third issue that I wanted to mention is the idea of Black careers matter. Clearly, this is terribly important, and a recent report by employers showed that between 9 and 8 of respondents were desirous that greater diversity in the workplace was advantageous. However, it seems to me very difficult to justify how employers can make such statements and not employ people purely on merit. It seems to me that it is an education issue here. It's clearly an issue of employers stepping up to the plate. There's been some good news over the pandemic in that the gap between Black and Asian students and white students in obtaining the top degree classifications, first and 2-1s, has indeed closed, and we now only have about a 10% disparity in favour of white students. This does seem to be a little difficult when we remember that last week the officers' students were complaining about the assessment methods that are being used to reveal student skills, for they weren't fully complying with the principles of grammatic construction. Of other interest is that two things really. One is the independent higher education group, a group made up of 60 private and non-for-profit institutions. For instance, Pearson's College is one of those, and so is Dyson. What they have been saying is that they are going to make a unique contribution to improving the needs of SMEs. They're going to do this through taking a much more aggressive market position. Interesting, but it does seem to me that they are talking to the converted. They're charging high fees for students who might ordinarily have got into state education, admittedly having to pay fees themselves, but it does seem very strange that institutions feel that they can be set up privately and do a better job than the government. The second issue is that there's the continued progression of the skills and post-16 bill. Interestingly, the major contribution made by the House of Lords is to have thwarted the government's attempt to introduce yet new qualifications, the T qualifications, to replace those BTECs that have great credibility and great use. Seems to me, again, it's people mucking around with what is good for the sake of defined originality. It does seem to me also that we're going to be looking more and more towards the end of the month when the spending review will be announced. And that's critical to us. One of which ideas have been mooted is that all students will require GCSEs, good grades in maths and English in order to justify student loans. Seems to me to be potentially inhibiting our most talented students who may not have a skill in one of those areas or may not be able to pass an exam, but can make a major contribution to our country. Well, thanks very much for listening. Speak to you next week. Bye-bye.